Right, okay. Take 3. Oh, for fuck. Is that in focus now? Okay, let's try again. This is my 3rd attempt at filming this. The first one was ruined by birdsong. Shut up, I'm trying to do a video. Shut up. And to be honest, it's probably a good thing because I look like a terrible assassin in that coat and sunglasses combo. Then I came back inside, still rocking the combo, but my mic didn't work. So here we are, like a week later, having another go. So fingers crossed this time it works because I really haven't got the stomach to do it again. So what this is, basically, is a Q&A. And I know what you're thinking, what? Q&A like Casey Q&A? Well, a couple of differences. You know how like Casey will go on Twitter and say, oh, I've got questions on whatever today, and then he'll have to like shut it down after 2 minutes because he's got 6,000 answers. Yeah, that's not really the case for me. And also, you know how he'll like combine mail time and Q&A? I mean, I can't really do that either. Well, I could, but I only got one thing in the post today, and it's a letter from my bank just saying thank you for confirming your tax residence. So, I mean, that it probably won't really work. But if you have a company that gives away free stuff, I just want to be one of those people that says I get given free stuff all the time. Sort of a life goal. So, let me know. So I don't often break Twitter or Instagram with questions. You know, I don't get loads and loads of questions all the time. What does happen though is every 2 or 3 weeks I get an email from a journalist or someone with a newspaper or a blog or a magazine or whatever, and they want to ask me some questions about my photos, which is very, very flattering, and usually they are the same kinds of questions, so I thought I'd just do a video answering those kinds of questions. By the way, if you're watching this and you're thinking what the hell's he going on about, who are you, I make photos like this and this and this and this, and yeah, so that's what this Q&A will be about really. If that's not of interest, then thanks for stopping by. If it is, then here goes. Age, I'm 27, but only for a few more days when that will change. Where am I from? Slightly more tricky one. So between 2011 and 2015, I lived in London with Emily, and then we both moved to Sydney, and then we went and did some travelling in New Zealand, which I vlogged. Check those out below. And right now we're staying with parents until September, when we're going to move to Manchester. Our parents are in Wales, and this is where I'm filming now. Actually, that first take was in my parents' back garden, and I got some nice B-roll when I did that first take. So in between questions in this video, I'll just sort of add some of that in to introduce a bit more colour to this Q&A. How long have you been using Photoshop? About 4 years. Why did you start? So before Emily and I moved to London, we went on like a round the world travelling trip. And that was really the first time that I was in any way interested in photography. Before that, I was just completely useless at taking pictures, had no interest in it whatsoever. But before we went travelling, I got myself what was at the time like a really good point and shoot, like a Lumix. Oh, I wish I still had it. What was it called? I'll look it up. And it was a point and shoot, but it had manual controls, so it was the first time I really got to understand what aperture was and what ISO was and blah blah blah, the rest of it. And I really enjoyed taking photos on that trip. So much so that when we got back and we moved to London, I bought a slightly better camera, and I'd spend my weekends walking around London trying to find original things to take photos of, which I thought was going to be quite easy in such a big place. But what I forgot was that there are 10 million people in London, and most of those have got some sort of camera now. And what that meant was that wherever I went, I'd sort of seen photos from that location. So I found it quite difficult to take like original photos. And when I did find somewhere that I hadn't seen before, I'd turn up and I'd be all excited. I'd like sort my tripod out, get my composition ready, correct my exposure, and I'd look up from the viewfinder and I'd have like 2 or 3 people that sat up either side of me trying to do exactly the same thing. So that was annoying. So I ended up a bit disillusioned with photography and sort of just left it for a little bit, until one day I just came across a really basic tutorial on what Photoshop could do, and I discovered layer masks and sort of how you could stitch photos together, and then I found my verve again straight away, because I knew I didn't have to find like original photos. I could stitch photos together to make an original concept. And since then, Emily hasn't seen me anywhere near as much, because I've been swanning off here, there and everywhere trying to find photos that I can stitch together. So that was, yeah, 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. I mean, for the purposes of this, I don't suppose it matters, does it? But yeah, started off doing it my weekends, now it's my job. What's your style? There are loads of people on Instagram, particularly on Instagram, who do amazing stuff with like tone and colour and contrast. So when they're stitching images together, they create like really surreal, just amazing scenes. I don't really find myself all that interested in doing, you know, like really surreal things. I always think with my images, I quite like them to look realistic, even though they're ridiculous, and you know, you've got like massive suitcases on top of cars and all that sort of stuff. I want it to look as though someone has just walked up to that scene, like a really odd thing in front of them, and just snapped it. I don't really know why. I think partially because you can't really trust what's in front of the camera a lot of the time these days. And even though obviously you can't trust what I'm doing, it's obviously still Photoshop, I kind of want it to look like it's the real deal. Yeah, surreal, but not surreal. Got it? First photo, this one. I went to Richmond Park for 3 weekends in a row trying to get a decent photo of grass. I waited at Heathrow for 4 hours to get a good shot of a plane landing, and I walked around Shoreditch for maybe 2 days trying to find a good angle of a billboard that didn't have a traffic jam in front of it. Good times. It's called Rough Landing, that one, and I actually do still quite like it. Favourite photo? Probably Zone 334, which is basically a tube station from London just in the middle of nowhere. It's actually by a lake in Wales, but it is the middle of nowhere, really. It's quite difficult to get to. I really like that one because, I don't know, I'm always looking for sort of contradictions and irony in photos. I think that's what kind of brings out humour, and I think that photo does it really well. And I also had to work quite hard for it. It's very difficult to get an empty tube station entrance that isn't in sort of bright daylight. So I ended up having to go to Piccadilly Circus at like 5 in the morning on a Sunday to get the photo of the tube station. And believe me, you see some sights when you do that. How do you come up with your ideas? So I don't know what it's like for other people who make stuff. For me, I kind of always expect that there's going to be some light bulb moment when I have like an amazing fully formed idea, but that is never the case. Normally I get ideas that are rubbish, and then I spend weeks or months trying to turn them into something that will work, or something that I'm able to take photos of to sort of, yeah, it's not a particularly pretty or romantic process. It's what's the word? Iteration. Lots and lots of iteration. What do you want to be doing in 5 years' time? I love what I'm doing at the moment. Like, you know, I make not surreal, composite photos as my job. I love that, and that's what I want to be doing in 5 years' time. I'd say if I did have one wish, it's that at the moment when I kind of come up with ideas, I have lots of boundaries. You know, a lot of the time I don't have the resources or the time or the finance behind me to just run off to Tokyo to get a picture I need out of a helicopter that I can then stitch into another image. Like I don't have infinite resources, and I'm not sure I ever want infinite resources, but I'd quite like to be in a position where if I have an idea, more or less all of the time I'm in a position where I can just go and take advantage of it straight away. So that'd be nice. How do you document your ideas? Evernote. Yeah, Evernote is great. I can have notes on my phone and on my computer, and they sync, and I mean, I think lots of apps do that now, but yeah, Evernote. Favourite Instagrammers? I like people that do different stuff, you know, like one-of-a-kind people. And I am not one of those, like lots of people stitch images together, but accounts like Paperboyo, you know, the paper cutout things. Tanaka Tetsuya? Is that how you say it? Tanaka Tetsuya? With the like little miniature people in all the different, yeah, stuff like that that is very sort of one-of-a-kind and different. I love accounts like that. What camera would you recommend? Again, tricky. I think it's difficult to buy a bad camera now. Like, all cameras are good cameras, and especially to do the kind of thing that I do, sometimes it can be an advantage to use not the best camera in the world, because like I said, I'm trying to make my images look like snapshots. And so when you're using the best equipment, you know, sometimes they can look premium, and then they can look like anything other than snapshots. So some of my most popular images, like Overground for example, was taken with my phone. But the reason I use a big heavy DSLR, and I'll do another video about this, is primarily dynamic range. So it does help when you're stitching different images together to be able to sort of pull highlights and shadows to match and blend the images together more naturally. So that's a bit of an advantage. But generally speaking, if you shoot in the right light and the right perspective, you won't have too much trouble using any camera at all when you're trying to do compositing. Favourite books, Wall and Peace, Banksy. I try and use that for inspiration, but I think Banksy's just a couple of levels above. Favourite music, I don't have a specific genre I go to. What I have found is that since making videos, I spend a lot of time on SoundCloud looking for tunes that I can use. So usually I'll just go on SoundCloud and let it play and have a couple of playlists that I save to. But yeah, nothing specific. That's a terrible answer, isn't it? Never mind. What gear do I use? I did another video on that. I'll put it in the description. It's not that old, so it's pretty up to date. The only thing I've added is the Lumix G80, which I'm filming on now, and the review for this was my last video, so I'll link to that. What do you hope to achieve with your art? Generally speaking, I think it's great that so many people now have access to some kind of camera and can, you know, take amazing photos with the phone or with any camera that they've got. I think it's brilliant. I think a lot of the time, for whatever reason, a lot of images are used negatively or cause negativity. Like, you know, they can cause jealousy or like all sorts of stuff. There's lots of negativity around. So I'd quite like my images to just make people smile. And as cheesy as that sounds, I'm actually quite happy with that answer. Since you started doing videos, would you consider a daily vlog? Ooh, no. No. So many people have got much more interesting lives than I have, just sat at my computer editing on Photoshop. And while my life is just that, I probably won't be doing daily videos. A, because it takes too much work, and B, because I don't have as interesting a life as other people that you should definitely watch instead with your very limited YouTube watching time. But I'll be here a couple of times a week, so just you know, if you can put those in and then like daily just watch other people, that'd be great. Some questions from Instagram as well. Do you like pineapple on pizza? Absolutely vile. Oh, and actually that concludes the Instagram questions.